The only difference between this and Mr. Lee's class is that you're going to be drilling into metal, and you probably didn't do that in Mr. Lee's class, am I correct? We just drilled into wood. But a lot of the same rules do apply. The big thing about the drill press is more people get hurt on the drill press than any other tool in this room. Reason? You turn it on, it spins, doesn't look like a big deal. But behind what's spinning is a whole lot of torque. And what's torque? Twisting force. Twisting force is what torque is. Yep. Torque is twisting force. So behind that there's a lot of torque. So this is called a drill vise right here. And can you grab that for me, please? How much does that weigh? I'd say about 12 pounds, maybe 10 pounds in there. This drill vise, I've seen this thrown past the cameraman all the way to where Richard's standing behind him. So if you get hit by that, hold it. Would you want to get hit by that? In the stomach, the knees, any other vital parts, you wouldn't want to get hit by that. So you need to make sure that when you're drilling with the drill press, you're paying attention to what's going on. It's not just something that spins. There's a whole lot of torque behind this thing, and it can take it and throw stuff. When I was in junior high, and I know you guys are in 9th grade, but I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I was making a Crookston Pirates shield because I went to school in Crookston, and we had to drill into a small piece of sheet metal. And the drill press was spinning, and I drilled into a piece of sheet metal, and the bit caught it, and the piece started to spin around. And so I just stuck my hand out because it didn't look like that big a deal to stop it. Well, sheet metal is really sharp, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, it is. Sheet metal is really sharp, and it dug into the meaty part of my hand. And I was really super cool, so I just put my hand in my pocket and bled all over my pants all day because I didn't want anyone to know that I cut myself on the drill press. But it put a pretty good gash in my hand. I actually still have the scar right there from it. Yeah, I know. It's pretty nasty. So the drill press can hurt you in a lot of different ways. You don't fear it, you respect the thing. Okay? So when you're drilling into steel on the drill press, unlike the wood, you have to give the bit time to cut. Steel's going to have a lot more, it's a lot harder material, so that the bit needs to take cuts out of it. If you're just pulling down on as hard as you can, all you're going to do is overheat the bit and then dull the bit. That's all you're going to do. Yeah, well, let's just drill a hole here to start out with. So I'm drilling into this piece of sheet metal. This piece of sheet metal is borderline whether I should hold it with my hand or use a vise or pliers. I'm going to use the pliers just because well, I have PTSD from getting hit by that other one 25 years ago. So let's move on. When you drill a hole in this thing, notice I'm drilling into the 2x4. I wanted to spin around, but that didn't happen. Yeah. Can you give me a smaller piece? Notice I'm drilling into the 2x4. Why have the 2x4 underneath it? What's the point of that?
Not recording.
Yeah, we don't want to drill into the table. This 2x4 is just a scrap piece of material, so we don't really care about that. That's not much smaller. Like a tiny piece, Sam. You can go into the red scrap metal bucket if you have to grab one. Right over there in the back. No. Other side. Over by the welding stuff over here. Big red barrel. You're a good man, Sam. Some safety things to keep note of on the drill press. Long hair, jewelry, stuff like this. And that's pretty much for anything you use in here, the sanders or the grinders. You're going to want to tuck your strings in. You don't want to get anything caught in rotating equipment. Let's drill another hole here. Thank you, Sam. That's perfect. So we'll drill a hole this time. Again, give me time to cut. What should I do?
Turn it off.
What do I do?
Turn it off.
Turn the machine off. Don't try to deal with it when it's spinning. Turn the machine off, and then you can take it off there. Okay?
Get that?
Now, good thing I was holding with the pliers, right? Pulling with my bare hands. would have hit my hands and caused some issues. If you're going to drill into small pieces, you should use a pliers or a drill vise. And when I say small pieces, I mean pieces less than a foot, you know, roughly this long. That's about 9 inches to a foot. Anything smaller than that, you should really be using a drill vise or a pliers to hold on to it. If you're going to use a drill vise, make sure that you're actually drilling a hole into the center portion of the vise. Don't have the hole drilling into one of the bed where the jaw sits. Okay. You may be required to change the drill bit. This is called the chuck key. This is called the chuck right here. This is called the chuck key. The chuck key is used to loosen the chuck so that you can take bits in or out. When you put a bit in there, make sure that you tighten it up real good with the chuck key. And a big deal, don't leave the chuck key in the chuck. I had a student that, when I first started here about 12 years ago, I left the chuck key in the chuck, had his hand over here doing something. I think he was holding on to this. And the chuck key whipped around, just tore a huge gash right in the back of his hand. He's okay. I mean, he's still walking around. But it was very painful, and he had to go get some stitches, if I remember correctly. So don't ever leave the chuck key in the chuck. Okay? That's a big no-no. Cover everything here. Any questions at all? Grinder is going to be the one, the next one where people get hurt by it. Once again, the reason why, turn it on, doesn't look like that big of a deal, but behind the spinning force, there's a lot of what? Torque. And what's torque again?
Oh, it's spinning force.
Twisting force.
Spinning force? Twist, spin, whatever.
Spinning force would be like centrifugal force. Like if you take a bucket and spin it around with water. Okay. So the grinder, you're going to use the grinder on your motor project to remove burrs possibly on parts, but I know you have to use it to sharpen the end of the armature. Just a couple things. The rotation of the wheel actually matters. So when you're grinding, the wheel always turns toward the down, and you don't want to have the whatever piece you're grinding be able to get thrown by the wheel. So I'll give you an example here. I'm going to stop real quick. The wheel's turning like this. So if I try to grind this like this, the wheel will want to grab this and throw it down. If I'm grinding it like this, now the rotation is away from the leading edge. I don't know if all of you can see that over there, but if I'm holding this like this, you can see how the wheel would grab it and throw it down. Okay, and that's how people get hurt by this thing, is they walk up to the grinder, start grinding stuff, and the wheel, all the force of the wheel, takes whatever piece they have and throws it down. And they get cut or get their fingers bruised against the tool rest, and they can get hurt. Another thing about the grinder, you know, the wheels themselves are made out of like little pieces of stone that are actually glued together. And so the glue that holds them together is pretty good stuff, but the wheels are actually really brittle, meaning they'll crack quite easily. So every time you start the grinder, you should always stand off to the side. If you noticed it when I started the first time here, I was standing off to the side. So the first time you start the grinder every day, you should always stand off to the side when you start it. And when the grinder reaches full speed, then it's okay to use the grinder. The reason for that is because somebody might have been walking around with a big piece of steel and rammed it into the wheel, and you don't know about it, and cracked the wheel. And then when the grinder reaches full speed and that wheel explodes, if you're standing in front of it, you're going to eat that stuff. And you're going to have pieces of stone embedded in your chest. I know two people that it's actually happened to. One was a college instructor I had, and another one was the guy who actually used to teach this class before me in the 90s. He had it happen to him at his shop at home. It knocked him unconscious, and he woke up covered in blood. So stand off the side of the machine the first time you start it. After that, the machine is safe to use, but it's a good rule of thumb to go with. Once again, when grinding small pieces on this thing, you should use a pliers. If something were to get sucked into the wheel, we don't want it to be our fingers. The pliers get sucked into the wheel, it's just the pliers. We don't care about that. If you're grinding stuff, a good rule of thumb is don't hold things as tight as you can. If you're holding things as tight as you can and something gets sucked into the wheel, you're going to get sucked into the wheel along with it. If something gets stuck into the wheel and falls on the floor, no big deal. You still have all your hands and your fingers, I should say. Okay? That's really what we care about here. Another thing about the grinding wheels, if you ever do install one, make sure you do a visual inspection on it. Make sure there's no cracks on it. And if there is a crack, throw it away. We can't fix it or anything like that. Strings, long hair, all that stuff, we can't have that. Because it gets caught in there. You should never grind on the side of the wheel. So don't grind on the side of the wheel when you're using the grinder. The wheels has a lot less strength that way, and you have a greater chance of damaging the wheel and also exploding it. So don't grind on the side of the wheel, only grind on the front face. Another good rule, don't ever use the grinding wheel wearing gloves. The gloves can get sucked into the wheel and start ripping fingers off with them. So don't grind stuff wearing gloves and using the grinding wheel. I know it's difficult for all of you to see, but in front of the wheels, there's this big tool rest right here. And that tool rest actually has a measurement that when I get safety inspections by our safety mock OSHA person and OSHA themselves, which was through here a couple years ago, there's a distance between the wheel and the tool rest that I can't be greater than. And we've been practicing measuring now for the last 2 days. So if I said, Kate and Grimlin, how much is 1/8 of an inch? What would you show me with your fingers?
1/8 of an inch.
Yeah, that's pretty close. That's pretty good. 1/8 of an inch is about that much. Everyone see what I got there? About that much. 1/8 of an inch, the distance between the wheel and the tool rest should be no greater than that. If you're using the grinder and you see that the distance between the tool rest and the wheel is greater than 1/8 of an inch, contact me and I'll make sure that it gets adjusted. Let's see, anything else? Let's do an actual demo of it, and then we'll shop here. So I noticed a lot of people are scared to use the grinder the first time. The reason why is because the grinder throws off a lot of sparks. People think the sparks are going to hurt them.
It tingles.
And what's that?
It tingles.
No, the sparks are vaporized. They're vaporized steel and vaporized pieces of the stone is what they are. So like on the 4th of July when you have sparklers and you're walking around with a sparkler, you're usually not too worried about the sparks themselves hitting you because it's pieces of the vaporized material that's burning up. Well, in this case, the sparks are actually pieces of vaporized metal, and by the time they hit you, they've cooled down enough and they're just little tiny specks of dust, if they even hit you at all, because they vaporize, that there's really no feeling or any heat left in them. So don't be scared of the sparks. We're going to work on removing this burr right here. Can you feel that burr on that side of the piece from where we cut it? So we'll run that across the wheel, just like that. Notice I'm operating with the rotation of the wheel. I'm not grinding like this. Okay, did we get rid of the burr? Yes, we did. That's about it. Any questions at all on the grinder?